Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back. In today's video, I'll be covering some basic built-in Python data structures, and I will also be covering for loops and while loops. So look forward to that, and let's get started right away. All right, I will start us off with just a quick review on what we did with environments. So first thing we need to do is activate our environment, which is data science. And from here, go into our projects directory. And lastly, since we have our environment set up already, we can just call Jupyter Lab. And there we go. So let me maximize this. Going to our data science folder and Python practices. So I have created a new notebook, and this is going to be our content for the day, which is covering data structures and loops. So I hope you guys follow along, and I will get started with strings. First off, what is a string? So a string is basically a combination of characters. For my first example, I created a new variable called myString, and I assigned it to hello exclamation mark. This is a string, period. So the first thing about Python string is that Python starts its index at 0. And what that means is whenever you start counting characters, the first one is always 0 instead of 1. So from here, let's go into slicing a string. So what slicing is basically getting a subset of the strings that we have. For example, in hello exclamation mark, we're going to grab the first 4 letters from it. And the notation here is start index, colon, and then the end index. So the end index is not inclusive, meaning this will stop at index 3. So you can think of it as grabbing 4 characters in total. So when we print this, it's going to be hell, because if we were to count this, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 is not inclusive. So we'll just grab the 4 beginning characters. From there, string also has uppercase function. So I can capitalize everything within string by doing dot upper. And same thing here, we can lowercase everything by doing dot lower. So this is extremely helpful because in real world, a lot of times when we want to match strings, we need to make sure that they are of the same casing. In this case, the typical standard is to lowercase everything before we make comparisons. Anyways, so moving on, we can grab the length of the string by doing len and the string variable like that. And this means that there are a total of 24 characters within the string. And if you were to look back at the variables we made, the space is also being considered as a character within the string. So those are being counted in this 24 characters. From there, string can also do addition and subtraction. And so here, I meant multiplication, sorry. So from here, if I were to do myString plus adding this to myString, then we have our original and we have our extras that we just added. And for multiplication, is just the number of times the string is going to repeat itself. So in this case, A, B, C, D, it repeated A, B, C, D 5 times. So that's the end of strings. Let's move on to lists. So list is a very useful data structure since you can contain basically anything within a single list. So for my first example, I created a variable called myList, and I just gave it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But it is not limited to just numbers. As I mentioned, you can add strings into it. You can add even dictionaries into it, like that. It doesn't matter. But just to keep things simple for now, let's move on with the example. So I created this myList and print it out. So the first thing I want to talk about is how to access an element from the list. And as I mentioned earlier, Python starts the index at 0. So basically what that means is when you give it index 3, it is not 1, 2, 3, it is 0, 1, 2, 3. So we're expecting 4 in this case, the number 4 from our list in this case. And there you go. And we can do the same slicing technique that we did with strings with lists. In this case, I'm grabbing the 0th index to the 3rd index. So remember that the 3rd index is not inclusive, so it should just be 1, 2, and 3. And from here, we can also append things into the list. And what that means is basically adding an element to the list to the end of the list. So here, our list ends at 5, and then now I'm adding a 6 to the end of it. And there you go. So now is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this append operation is permanent. So now this my list is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 instead. There you go. And from here, I want to remove an item since I just added an item. And 2 ways to do it. Well, 3 ways technically, but I'm going to talk about 2 of them. Pop, which basically removes the item and also returns that specific item. So in this case, I am popping the item at index 4. So index 4 will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so which is the number 5. And so this remove variable will be the number 5. And 5 will be removed from my list. So let's take a look. So as you can see, removed is the number 5. And my list only now has 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. 5 has been removed. And another way to remove the value is to use the remove function instead of pop. So the difference is that remove does not return what has been removed. So I know I said a lot of remove. So let's clarify a little bit. So when we use pop, we were able to save it to a variable because when you use pop, it returns the character that you're removing from the list at the 4th index, which is 5. But when you use remove, you just remove the item, but nothing is returned. So let's take a quick look. So we move the 1st index. So in this case, 1 has been removed. And continue on. We want to basically change an element within the list. And in this case, I want to change the 0th index of my list to have the value 100. So as you can see, 2 has been substituted with 100. And we can also find the length of the list by using len. And 1, 2, 3, 4, there are 4 items in the list, so it returns the length of 4. And lastly, you can also do an addition with list. And in this case, it's just going to combine the lists together. So we add my list with a new list with 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So this is the old list, and then here is the new list that has been combined together. Okay, moving back to remove. I realized that I did not explain 1 here. So when you remove 1, you're actually removing the character 1, not removing at index 1. So what that means is, let's say if I want to remove the character 4, I don't do my list dot remove 2. I don't do that because yes, we know that character 4 is currently at the index 2, but when we do remove 2, it's actually going to remove this specific character. So remove takes the argument of a specific character, while pop takes index as the argument. So here, let's remove 4. And now if I were to look at my list again, so 4 is gone. Okay, so that covers it for lists. And next, we'll move into dictionaries. So what are dictionaries? Dictionaries are basically key value pairs, where if you provide the key, it'll return the value. And this is extremely useful, especially in data science. Anyways, let's continue on. So I created a new dictionary called myDict, and we set 1 to the value 1, 2 to the value 2, 3 to the value 3. And from here, to access the value of the dictionary, we need to provide it with a key. So in this case, I'm providing 1, and this should return the integer 1. And just to throw it out there, you can also use the .get method. So I can do myDict.get1, and that will also return 1. So from there, we can add a new value to the dictionary by providing a key and the value for it. So the syntax is your dictionary name or variable name for your dictionary, and you do not bracket, you do a square bracket, and you assign a new name to a new key to it, and then you assign the value to the key. So let's do that, and now you see 4 colon 4 is now inside the dictionary. And if you want to get all the keys from the dictionary, you can do .keys, which will look like this. And same, if you want to get all the values from the dictionary, you can do .values. And this is the most helpful function a dictionary can give, which is the .items, because this returns the key value pair. And there are tons of applications with this, and we can definitely go into more detail with that later on in the homework. Anyways, if we want to remove an item, then we can also use the pop method. And in this case, instead of providing an index, you provide the dictionary key. So I'm going to remove 1 from the dictionary. So 1 is removed, so only 2, 3, and 4 are left. And last but not least, you can also call len on dictionary to get the length of the dictionary. In this case, 3, because we just deleted 1. So yeah, that's dictionaries. And next we'll be talking about loops. So there are 2 types of loops that we'll be covering today. One is a for loop, and one is a while loop. So what is a for loop? A for loop is basically a way to iterate through your lists, your dictionary, your string, or whatever that's iterable. And either you can iterate it through the length of it, or you can iterate through the item of it. So in the first example, I'm going to iterate through something that is of length 6. So let's run that. So since I provide range 6, it's going to iterate through until you reach 6. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And remember, Python is not inclusive of the last index. And from here, we can also loop through the items of a list or dictionary or any iterable. And instead of providing an index, you can just ask for the loop to return the item. So here's the example. So I have some items, and in this case, it's just returning the items rather than an index. So here's another example of for loop. So let's say we have my list 2 equal, let's do I am a new example, and 1, 2, 3, like that. So let's quickly print it out. And from here, I want to do a few things. First, I want to iterate through this new list with index. So how do I do that? I can do for I in range length of my list 2, and length of my list 2 should return the length of this list. So it's going to be substituted by a number, so similar to this right here. And I can print my index, and I also want the item at that index. So at 0 is I, at 1, index 1, it's am, and so on. And going back to this example, I want to do the same for my list 2. And in this case, I can just do item. And what this will return is just the items within the new list that we have created. And one last example of one last example of a for loop, but assuming that we don't have the index, so we can do something like for I my list 2 in enumerate my list 2. And what enumerate does, it automatically returns an index. So we can do print I and this should be item. I and item. And there you go. It's basically the same result as this, but it's just another way to access the index. So moving on, the next loop is a while loop. So the difference between a while loop and for loop is that while loop is based off of a condition. So let's look at the first example. We set I equal to 0, and we say that if the condition I is less than 10, then we print out what I is, and from there we add 1 to this I. We basically add 1 every time the loop ran. And one thing to watch out is if the condition is never fulfilled, if the condition is always being fulfilled, then this loop will be stuck in an infinite loop. So for example, if I were to not update the I, and I just leave I at 0, and since 0 is always less than 10, it will just continue to print I without stopping. That's why this part where I add 1 to I is very important. So let's run that real quick. So while loop can work in different ways. So we can say something like while 2 equal 2 print 2 or something like that. And this will get us stuck in an infinite loop because 2 is always equal to. So we can do something like var equal to 2, and we can say, well, var equal 2 print 2, and then we can do var equal 3, and this should break us out. There you go. So we just print 2 once because that matched 1 time, and then the variable got changed again. So while loop can be very useful when you have a definite condition that you can change depending on the situation, and we just need to loop through as the condition is until the condition is being met, or until the condition ends. All right, so that is it with loops, and let's move on to the homework section. Please try the homework out on your own first. Take a pause here, give it a try, and see if you're understanding the concept, so you'll be able to complete the homework on your own. But regardless, I'm going to provide a walkthrough of the homework, so stay tuned. All right, let's get started with question 1 on the homework. So we're given 2 strings. String 1 equal hello. String 2 equal world. And we want to combine both strings. So string 3 equal string 1 plus string 2. So let's print out string 3 real quick. So what do you see? There is no space between hello and world. And remember to add spacing between. So what we can do here is we can simply add an empty space between the 2 strings like that, and reassign it to string 3. So now we have hello world with a space in between. Okay, so moving on to question 2. With string 3, find the number of vowels that appear in the string. If the number of vowel is an odd number, print the number itself and say it's odd. Do the same if the number of vowels is even. Okay, so we have string 3, and we want to find the number of vowels that appear in the string. So our vowels are A, E, I, O, U. So let's do that. Vowel equal A, B, I, O, and U. So what we want to do is we want to confirm or check how many of these vowels are in the string. So let's do that. String 3, if item in vowel print, and what do we want to print? If the number of vowel is an odd number, print the number itself and say it's odd. Okay, so we need to track the number of vowels. So basically what I did is I started a new variable to track the number of vowels, and if the item, which is the character within the string, is equal to any of these, then we'll just increment the number of vowels by 1. And from here, we can do else continue. And what continue is, it just means that keep working. And there's no extra steps to take. And from here, we have to check if the number of vowel is odd or even. So remember from last lesson, we can do mod 2. And if the remainder is 0, that means the number is even. So we want to print the number of vowels, and we want to print even. Else, we want to print the number of vowels and saying it's odd. So that's it. Let's run it. And we know the number of, and then from this, we know the number of vowels. There are 3 vowels, and therefore we'll print odd. Okay, moving on to question number 3. We have a list. So I'm going to just call that L equal, and it's a list of these numbers. So I'm just going to copy and paste. We want to find number of odd and even elements. If the number of odd elements is greater than the number of even elements, then print a master of odd number, and vice versa. If the number is equal to each other, print I'm neither odd or even. So to solve this, we can first start by creating 2 trackers. So my odd equals 0, and my even equals 0. Then I can start looping through for item. You know what? Now I'm gonna code for num in L, since they're all numbers. If num mod 2 equals 0, which is to find all our evens, we can do even plus equal to 1, meaning we are incrementally increasing by 1 if the condition is met. Else odd plus equal 1. So from here, we need to make a comparison to see if the odd and even equal each other, or if they're greater or less than others. So we can do if odd is greater than even, then we'll print I am master of odd numbers. Else if even odd is less than even, then we can print I am master of even numbers. And lastly, else, the only case left is that they equal to each other. We can just print I am I am neither odd or even. Oops, forgot to put this in quotes. There you go. So I'm master of even numbers because we're more evens than odds. So let's quickly look through. That's an odd, even. That's an odd, even, even. So 4 evens and 3 odds. So this is right. I'm a master of even numbers. So question number 4 is a little more challenging. Let's copy this first. So we have a dictionary of all the students along with their ID. So student ID 1 is Stewie, and student ID 2 is Brittany, and so on. So from here, what I want to do is I want to go through each item, and I wanted to see if the first letter is capitalized or not. And if it's not, I want to capitalize it so the student names can display correctly. So from here, I'm going to do for K standing for key, comma, value standing for V standing for values in student ID dot items. And what I want to do is I want to check the value of the first letter. So you'll be using string slicing here. If V of the first letter equal V of the first letter dot upper, meaning check if they are uppercase, and if they are uppercase, then you don't have to do anything about it since it's correct in the correct format. So let's just continue the loop. Else, what we want to do here is we want to replace the dictionary item, dictionary value at the corresponding key. So student ID, which is the dictionary, and at that key, we want to set it equal to the value of the first letter. That is uppercase, so we dot upper here. And remember, we can concatenate strings using addition. So in this case, we want to add the rest of the elements within that string. So in this case, what we can do is we can just do 1 colon, and colon will automatically reach the end of the string, starting from index 1. Since we have index 0 here, changed to uppercase. So now, if we were to print student ID, voila, all the names have been capitalized. So please try this question again, and instead of going through this process of checking the key, what you can do is look for this Python string is upper function, and give that a try and refactor the code and see if that helps making the code easier. All right, last question. Write a while loop with an initial condition of I equals 0, and as long as I is less than 20, print all the even numbers. So this one should be a lot easier than the previous question. Let's just do I equals 0, and while I is less than 20, and from here we want to check. We only want to print the even numbers, so we need to write a condition. If I ma2 equals 0, then we print I. And from there, we do I plus equal to 1. If you don't increment I, then you're just going to be stuck in the loop. So now let's give that a try. And there you go, printing out all the even numbers. Oh, I don't know if you noticed, we did not print out 20, so we just need to add less than equal to 20 to include 20. There you go. That is it. Well, I hope you guys enjoy the lesson and the homework, and I look forward to teaching you guys more on the next video.